It's about 3 o'clock, so I think we'll start.
Okay.
If you're ready.
Yes,
You
we're
need another
ready.
minute?
Yep.
You're right? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Councilor Bryn Lovejoy-Grinnell, and also here we have Councilor LaToya Allen, Councilor Tim Rudd, Councilor Khalid Bey, Madam President Helen Hudson, Councilor Steve Thompson, and Councilor Joe Carney. Would you introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Donna Briscoe. I'm the Interim Director of Personnel.
I am Margaret Chaika, Personnel Analyst.
And would you give us an overview of your program?
So the overview, for the Personnel Office, we oversee all of the employees onboarding and offboarding, the New York State retirement system, employee benefits, our deferred compensation programs and other voluntary benefits, the workers' compensation, training, recruitment. We have the ADA diversity component in our office. We work with all of the departments.
I just want to note that Councilor Joe Driscoll is here as well. All right, can you first give us, the questions I have are somewhat related to the new restructuring of the Office of Personnel here. Can you describe a little bit about that, if you know?
Okay, so our office has gone through some transitions, and obviously change in leadership and restructuring of the department is something that is a work in progress, something that we will be working with the administration on. We have asked for some new positions related to that. We want to centralize our personnel functions, have a one door in, one door out, and streamline processes. Right now it's kind of defragmented, and each department kind of has their own forms and processes, so it's trying to centralize those is what the goal is, and having more of a support and a resource and moving towards more human resources.
I noticed that there are 2 positions that are proposed to be added, or 3 positions that are proposed to be added in the 1920 budget. One is an additional personnel analyst and 2 additional personnel specialists.
That's correct.
Can you describe the role of those folks and why it's important to add those folks?
So the personnel analysts have more of a they're more of a specialty. They know or should know more of employee relations and retirement and civil service and that process. And then the personnel specialists are more of generalists that have knowledge of all of the things and assist with the personnel analysts. The goal would be to have, instead of having each department have those functions with onboarding and offboarding, we have the specialists and the generals that will help each department with processes and procedures.
So I guess my question about that is, will we see reductions in staff in other departments to reflect that some of those capabilities are going to be taken over by those 3 positions?
So there will be some reductions. We don't know exactly where that will be. It will be more in efficiencies. We're looking at having more software programs, looking at an HRIS system, the Human Resources Information System, looking to have more efficiencies throughout the departments. We will have savings there. But right now we're in the process. I mean, this is going to be a multi-year process and centralizing and getting this, the systems in place. So eventually, yes, we would see that the departments would have less expenses. And we've recently had an uptick in discrimination claims and harassment, and so we need to have better training for our departments, which that would be for the personnel specialist, the ones the personnel analysts choose that have the specialty in those kinds of things. So right now we have a lot of, our law department is assisting us with claims that have been substantiated. So the goal, long-term goal for that kind of stuff is that those costs would be lowered as well, because we would be doing the upfront training and assisting in those kinds of things.
Okay, then I guess two follow-ups. One is to that issue of the people and reductions in other departments. So was it fair to expect that in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, what is the, I agree, or I can float with you the idea that you need some time to figure out what spots we can, where the efficiencies are in putting people in personnel, but what is the long term? Because if there really are efficiencies in doing this, then you'd think that we would see a reduction in the need for those personnel in other departments.
So the goal is to take the functions out of, we don't have, each department doesn't have we have a personnel administrator in one department, we have other management analysts that do personnel functions out in other departments. So it's going to be an assessment of those who are doing those duties now, and how are we going to bring those in. It's going to be similar to what they did with the financial operations, which, you know, that was started out as a pilot project, and now they're starting to bring the Tiger team is now under purchasing, and so that's kind of where it's all being centralized to. So it's the same kind of thing. You have efficiencies, but it's going to take a process of evaluating what are the needs, where are we pulling them from. So yes, I do think that we will be, but I can't give you specifically where that's coming from. That's something that we're working with the administration. We're in the beginning stages of doing a comprehensive review of the department.
Can I get you to commit to a year, 2 years, or 3 years that we will see reductions in personnel in other departments reflecting the efficiencies?
Within a year.
Within a year. Okay. Then the other follow-up on your statement that you've seen an uptick in discrimination, harassment complaints. I'm looking at page 83 on the personnel services related to, I think, the topic that you're talking about. Maybe not. I see work being done on these issues here. Are these numbers reflective of the uptick that you've been seeing, or has this been more than a year-long uptick? Are these, or is this so recent that they're not reflected here?
I think they're pretty recent that they're not in the budget, right? Yeah. Right.
Do you ever look at the activity indicators other than this time of year right now?
Well, we always track all of our complaints, so we do have that. We do have those numbers. We do have to report to the EOC when there are substantiated claims, so we do have those numbers.
Okay.
I have one more question about the proposed budget, which is I see a huge increase again on page 86 in professional services. Excuse me. No, I think that's travel, training, and development, actually. Can you explain that difference? We're looking at a projected fiscal year 19 of $9,200 and a fiscal year 20 proposed $22,842.
So we have to do additional trainings. One of the requirements in New York State is the sexual harassment training. We have mandated training that we have to offer to every single employee.
Didn't that have to be provided by April of 2019?
No, our policy, no, it's October. We have to get it, all the trainings in by October. But our policy had to be implemented. We have the policy implemented, and now we have to do the training for every single person. We are go ahead.
So what's your plan? What's your plan? And these are outside trainers, I guess you're bringing in. Or?
We would have to do some outside training. We need staff development training in our own office. With the uptick in the discrimination claims, I think we need more training in our own office. And then we need to do more training citywide with supervisors. And we have started diversity training. We went out to first line supervisors at fire and did that diversity and harassment training. We initiated sexual harassment trainings for department heads, and we are going to be starting to do that and develop a training out in with all of the departments. We are scheduling those now. So I'm working with Frank and the team now.
Okay, so you would say that's reflective of a change in law with regard to the sexual harassment
yes,
training? Yes,
that and the fact that we recognize that we need to have more internal trainings.
Okay. Do other counselors have questions?
Sure.
Thompson.
Okay, thank you. Donna, first of all, I want to say on behalf of the number of people that I've worked with and whatnot and the retirees, that your office does a wonderful job. And I know how responsive you are to everybody, and they really appreciate it, very much so. So I want to get that out there. And when you're saying that you're going to be centralizing, what do you mean by that? Centralizing within certain departments or all? Fire, police, DPW, are we speaking? Or are we speaking small, start with DPW?
I think we have to start incrementally, but there are some things we can centralize, like our forms and processes. Right now we see that the water department, DPW, they have different forms for the bid process, for civil service, I mean, there's a lot of different. It's consistency and centralizing those processes, and also making sure that when we're doing onboarding, we're all doing it the same way, and that we are in the loop before someone is hired. Those kinds of things that are not consistent. That's the centralization that we're looking at. You know, there's a lot of inconsistency right now, but those are things that we're looking at centralizing, and I think some of the departments we can easily bring in, but then, I mean, police has their own systems that will be a little more difficult. So I think incrementally we'll be looking at all of those things.
Okay.
This is not going to be something that we can get done in a year, but we are, I mean, there's a lot of things that we'll be looking at doing and bringing in, modernizing our systems. That's key. We have systems right now. AS400 is a very old system. The reporting and stuff to pull from that is not easy. There's much more efficient ways to do that everybody sees the same information. So those are things that we're going to be looking at and analyzing.
Okay, I have two more questions.
Sure.
One is we always get requests about Syrah.
Okay.
Do we have a list? Do you have a list?
Yeah.
And so we can take a look and maybe get back to you on some of the stuff there, but you've got something now. And while she's getting that, labor contracts, how are they going to be handled now? Are you going to be the lead agency, the lead department on this, or what is going to occur?
We have to look at bringing in a labor specialist. That's something we're going to be reviewing. That's something I think that this administration is going to be looking at, but right now we have a team working on preparing for PBA negotiations. So there's a team of us that are together now working on that. But yeah, I think labor is something that we need to bring a specialist in for.
And is there a position in the budget for that?
Well, I think right now we still have a director of labor management services in there, so.
No. Okay, and the Syrah stuff.
So I printed out a list earlier today,
Okay.
and we have both part-time and full-time employees on here. I believe some of the part-time employees are not part-time, the temporary employees, they still show up on the list even though they're not currently working. I just wanted to
Can you
point
get
that
us a
out.
copy of that?
Yeah.
Just want to note that Counselor Mike Green is also present.
Those are my questions, thank you.
And can I just ask about centralizing HR?
Okay.
I know that fire and police, they're gonna be a little different because of the things they do. But I'm just gonna say it. I had DPW for 6 years, and the biggest complaints I got was nepotism.
Right.
And that's one of the departments that I would like to see brought under the roof of HR, because the way they did their hiring, it wasn't right.
DPW will be one of the first ones I think that we will be looking at.
And that's
to
probably
centralize.
where all of your grievances and your complaints are coming from, and your discrimination cases.
I
I'm
wouldn't
sure.
say it's all one department, no.
I don't know. I'm happy that you guys are kind of centralizing this, because that's one of the things that has never made sense to me, that each individual department kind of gets to do their own thing. I think this is much more efficient. My only suggestion, and I know we've had this conversation, is I think whoever the director is, if we can trick a labor relations lawyer into taking the job, I think that would really benefit the department.
That would.
Yeah, so.
That really would.
No, I'm not arguing with that we need more labor specialists there, so.
How does the, no, well, this labor negotiations, right, is, because you got personnel, which is, I guess, hiring, firing, everything in between. And then you've got, it says labor relations in the title of the office, but is there which one of these positions is really thinking about labor negotiations? Is there capacity, is there any, like, what is the capacity for labor analysis for labor negotiations to inform actual negotiations?
So right now, I would say we need a labor specialist to come in and help us with that. You know,
That's not one of the new positions, right? It's just not there.
it's
nothing.
well, actually, the personnel analyst twos would and do help with that, and can help with that. That's part of their aspect, is in the analyzing, and for any of our labor contracts. We also work with a labor attorney, so those are things that we are doing. And I'm going to say that we, as a department, are pretty young. I mean, there's one of our staff has been there over 20 years. The rest of us have been there less than 7. So it's a bit of a learning curve for some of us. So learning all the different contracts and what they are, I think we're doing a pretty good job with that, as far as, you know, trying to get up to speed with the labor contracts and grievances and the arbitrations, and we're working closely with law on that. But I wouldn't disagree that we need a better labor relations person in the office.
Just historically, because of the speciality of it, we hired Chef and King for negotiations for many years. Because it took twice as big as that specialty would be. That's different historically.
And we still are using Bond, Shenick, and King. Yes.
Where does that money show up? Professional services?
That's not under our budget.
Yeah, that would be under law.
Oh, it's under law.
Right, outside
So the
counsel.
only real capacity to do. Okay.
All right, Counselor Bay is being bashful about asking this, so I'm going to ask. Tell me about the item marked as car allowance in personal services, please.
Car allowance, we have a safety officer that has, that's Bianca Tierney, our multicultural affairs and diversity specialist, and she's out in the community. So she has a car allowance, and I currently am receiving a car allowance.
Because of her work moving around
Correct.
while she's working.
Yes,
Thank you.
she's-
I should just do the follow-up with the SIR. Are we working toward getting the people that are within their specs, civil service or anything along those lines?
For, Sura?
Yeah.
I believe with the Sura, there's going to be, those positions are all being reviewed by, I believe, the deputy mayor is taking that on. So she will be reviewing that, and we will work with her on any of those positions.
This is all Sura. And I'm sorry if this is a redundant question. Has Sura, what's the budget this year as compared to last year? Do you know?
For the Sura payroll?
Yeah.
I don't know if we have access to that Sura payroll. We can get back to you on that.
Right.
I don't think we have that with us. We'll get
Because I
back to you.
think, if I remember correctly from last year, we said that the goal was to utilize it less and wind it down, and it looks like an expansion to me, but I don't know.
We can look at the numbers from last year to this year and,
Okay.
and let you know.
Yeah, if you can let me know, thank you.
This year's our year.
What was that?
This year's our year.
Oh, so the first is
I mean,
past
the
year, and
next page, it looks like.
then that's the next year?
No, this is all this year.
Yeah, this is all this year.
So
Saying
69.
how does
What-
it compare to last year?
Yeah, what,
We need last year's.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we can get you last year's.
just for sake of information, I'm not sure if everyone, and I don't want to speak for anyone, is clear on how SOAR gets its money. Can anybody explain that for all available?
How Sura gets its money, it's
Right, we have people on payroll out of SOAR. Mm-hmm. Where does the money come from?
I'm not sure if that's grant funded or not. I'd have to find out and get back to you.
Let me ask the, Mr. Clerk.
He was asking if you could explain where the money for Sura comes from.
Can you come up to the microphone?
Where is budget?
Many years ago, SOAR was created because the city got a lot of federal and state grants that were temporary programs. And the idea was you shouldn't have to fill people into civil service and have bumping rights and all that when the program may only last a short period of time. So over the years, it's kind of morphed into a different use. I can explain a little difference. But for example, people hired under the Community Development Block Grant are legitimate SURA hires under the definition of what SURA was created for in the first place. If the position could be classified as civil service, it probably should be in the general fund budget as a civil service position, but there are a number of those SURA positions that could be civil service. For example, we have paralegals in SURA, we have paralegals on the general budget. So the question is, I guess as a policy question is, we have been criticized by the New York State Controller and the Onondaga County Controller for putting positions that belong on civil service onto SURA. The policy has been in prior administrations was to decrease the SURA payroll as people retire or leave the agency and move them on and move new people on to the civil service, so as not to disrupt people who are long-term employees. So theoretically, this list should be contracting based on past policy. But that's my understanding, is that if you have a job that's related to a grant, and even the Community Development Block Grant can be considered temporary because it might someday run out, that if that job is connected to a grant, it's a legitimate SURA position, and if it's not, you have to justify it, some other way.
So, sorry, clerk, if you could stay on. So, I understood everything you said, but does that clarify where the money comes from?
Well,
Counselor Bay's
that's how
question?
it used to be. SURA money came from the grants.
Right. Does
If
it
there is
still?
if the position is not funded by a grant, that's where you see the 415 professional services line. If you look at every department, you're not always hiring outside services. That's where the SURA money is in it. So when you see a 415 line in, let's say, well, I don't have any SURA payrolls, but any budget, if you see a 415 line and it has an amount of money that looks like a salary or more, that's where the SURA money comes from. They take it out of the department contracting services line to pay the position.
Okay, thank you.
The majority of the persons who are on the SOAR payroll, am I right to assume that that's an MBD?
Most of them are an MBD, yes.
Okay. That's all I got.
Do we have currently, or are we planning under kind of the new personnel to have a labor relations person that will kind of proactively go out to field staff and provide labor relations training, particularly for maybe new managers that aren't, you know, that are experts in the field but not labor relations?
Yes, yes, we're actually, we've done a presentation asked Bond to come in and help with the training. We did it with department heads. We are going to be offering it again, and we will be doing training throughout for all of our supervisors.
And which is a great component too, but the other thing would be, you know, is there someone, if you're a new manager and you say, hey, the union's telling me this, is that right? Like, is there someone on staff that is kind of the resource that they can run those questions by?
They could run that by myself or Margaret, yes. Yes.
Okay. Because then I also think, you know, providing those, and probably this is already happening, but it can provide ideas for potential negotiation topics where if managers are frequently coming up and saying, hey, this is an issue frequently, that could be something we might want to negotiate. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Are there other questions from the counselors? You gonna think about it? No, you're good? Okay. So we close the hearing? We'll say we're done? All right. Thank you very much. I want to say, as a recent hire here, I really appreciate the personnel office, and everyone was very, very helpful and very, very accommodating. So thank you very much, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.